I just finished reading one of the scariest books I've ever encountered. No, it's not a horror novel or a dramatic story filled with suspense. It's not fiction, but it's not exactly non-fiction either, at least not yet. Nuclear War by Annie Jacobsen is terrifying because it isn't just speculative. Based on interviews with high-ranking officials and declassified documents, the book brutally outlines what would happen to both civilians and soldiers if a nuclear attack were launched against the United States. But the horror isn't just in the body count, it's in the aftermath. The civilization we know would collapse swiftly and irreversibly. It's astonishing to realize how fragile our world really is. We take the existence of our daily systems for granted, from communication networks, financial markets, and supply chains to the basic infrastructure of modern life. But Jacobsen shows us that everything could be turned upside down in the blink of an eye. A single nuclear explosion wouldn't be the only event. Due to the nature of deterrent strategies, the urge for self-defense, and the need for rapid retaliation, nuclear war rarely stops at one explosion. Once the first missile is launched, more will follow. Countermissiles will soar through the sky before the first bomb even hits U.S. soil. A deadly chain reaction triggered by paranoia, misunderstandings, and mistrust. If you think this scenario is far-fetched, just look at how World War I started. Read about the events that transpired in the summer of 1914, the tensions, diplomatic errors, and the domino effect that pushed leaders into a war no one knew how to stop, resulting in the slaughter of an entire generation of young Europeans. No need for a madman with a desire to destroy the world, just a single miscalculated moment by someone with their finger on the nuclear button. What haunts me about nuclear war is the speed of the disaster. The time it took me to read the book is 10 times longer than the time it would take for the entire scenario to unfold in real life. In the time it takes to watch a 2-hour movie, the world would forever change. This timeline has never existed in human history. Other wars lasted for years, even decades. But this war would be measured in minutes. There would be no time to deliberate, no strategic plans, no last-ditch efforts to de-escalate. Once the chain reaction begins, nothing can stop it. Within an hour, major cities across several continents would turn into craters. Nuclear fallout would sweep through rural areas. Imagine the eruption of Mount Vesuvius burying Pompeii, but happening everywhere. Governments would collapse. Communication systems would be severed. The world we know would end instantly. A nuclear war wouldn't just be another war, it would be an extinction event. The Cold War era, duck and cover, drills for American children seem laughable in hindsight. Millions of people, families, children, entire communities would be incinerated in an instant. And the survivors? They would be the most unfortunate, facing days of agony or stepping into a desolate, radioactive world, much like the grim setting in Cormac McCarthy's The Road. I've said that this book is terrifying, and it certainly is. But beneath the tension of facing a terrifyingly plausible scenario, another emotion rises: gratitude. The awareness that the world could vanish at any moment makes me appreciate it even more. Chesterton once wrote, "The way to love something is to realize that you could lose it." We've all felt this on a smaller scale. When hearing about a tragic accident involving someone's child, we instinctively hold our own children tighter. When we realize the fragility of life, we cherish it more. In his St. Francis of Assisi, Chesterton describes how the saint saw his hometown turned upside down. Looking with normal eyes, the firm walls and the strong foundations of the watchtowers and the fortifications would make the city seem safe and secure. But when looking from the other direction, these same things made the city more fragile than ever. A strange paradox. When looking at the world on the verge of destruction, we realize that everything we rely on to feel safe is actually the most vulnerable. But instead of despairing, this leads us to love, joy, and service. This love is tied to something deeper, dependence. Chesterton explains that when St. Francis looked at the world from a new perspective, he didn't love it less, but loved it more. He could see and love every tile on the roof, every bird perched on the wall. But he would see them all in a new light, a sacred light of fragility and dependence. This is what nuclear war made me realize, not just fear, but a deeper awareness of the world's dependence on God's mercy. My life is the same. We don't know what the future holds or how close the next disaster may be. But one thing is certain: God sustains everything. He restrains evil more than we can imagine. He gives us every breath, even though none of us deserve it. And He has promised that, even in the deepest darkness, He can turn evil into good. Who knows? Perhaps Jacobsen's book will serve as a wake-up call, a warning, a tool that God may use to remind humanity of the fleeting nature of this world and the omnipotence of the Most High.